For 3 years, I opened his shop at 6 in the morning, did the books, watched his kids, and closed at night. My paycheck was a thank you card on Mother's Day. He called it helping family. The IRS would have called it something else, but back then I only heard his voice and told myself that was enough. I still remember the night he asked. A Tuesday, one of those quiet suburban evenings where the streetlights buzz and the television hums in the background. I was rinsing dishes in my small kitchen, the smell of spaghetti sauce still hanging in the air, when my phone lit up with his name. My son. Even then, just seeing his name used to warm my chest, like I'd been chosen for something important. I dried my hands on a dish towel and answered, trying to sound casual, though he rarely called without needing something. "Hey, Mom," he said. His voice was extra sweet, careful in that way that meant he wanted a favor. "You busy?" That question always hit me oddly. On the surface, it sounded polite. Underneath it carried an assumption. My time was open, my plans adjustable, my life flexible. A tiny pinch tightened under my ribs. I looked at the sink full of dishes, the pile of mail, the bills tucked under a grocery flyer, and said, "No, not really. What's going on?" I hated how quickly I erased myself with that answer. He started talking about the shop he'd just opened with his wife. "We're slammed, Mom." "It's a good problem, but it's still a problem," he said, laughing a little. "We just thought it would be easier if you could help us out for a while. Work in the family business." We just thought, like the decision had already been made and I was only being informed. I swallowed the irritation, because swallowing things was what I'd always done. For years my job had been making life smoother, not harder. Still, my stomach tightened. "What do you mean, help out?" I asked, even though I already knew it would be more than help. He painted a bright picture. "I'd open the shop in the mornings, handle the register, maybe do the books since you're good with numbers, watch the kids every now and then when daycare got complicated." Each phrase felt like another brick being quietly stacked on my back. "It wouldn't be forever, Mom," he added quickly, "and you're not doing this for free. You're part of this. You'll have a share. We'll write it all down in the will." Those words, "write it down in the will," landed like a promise wrapped in gold. For a moment I felt proud, important, chosen. A share meant security. It meant not living paycheck to paycheck in a small apartment. It meant building something that would outlast me. And still, a smaller, colder voice whispered, "Why the will? Why not now? Why not a contract?" I pushed that voice down because I didn't want to sound ungrateful. "I don't know," I said slowly. "I mean, I have my own job and—" He cut in, still cheerful but sharper underneath. "Mom, it's not like you love that job. You've told me 100 times they don't appreciate you. This is family. We take care of our own." Family. We take care of our own. I heard the guilt tucked inside the sentence, the quiet warning that if I said no, I'd be the one refusing to take care of family. My throat tightened, not from one word, but from the way he used our history like a tool. I remembered every late pickup from practice, every school project I stayed up helping with, every bill I covered when he was starting out. Now that lifetime of giving was being turned into an obligation I was supposed to accept with a smile. "I just don't want confusion," I said softly. "If I'm working there, I should probably be on payroll, right?" My heart thudded as I said it. Even asking for something as basic as a paycheck made me feel difficult. He chuckled, light, dismissive, the kind of laugh that always made me feel small. "Mom, come on, don't make this complicated. It's all the same money. It's our business. We'll make sure you're taken care of. And like I said, you'll be in the will. This is long term. Not some little hourly thing. Not some little hourly thing." The phrase stung. My time, my labor, my energy, reduced to something little. Heat crawled up my cheeks even though he couldn't see me. In that moment, I felt ashamed for wanting something official, and foolish for hoping he'd offer it. I told myself I was overreacting, that he didn't mean it the way it sounded. That's how I'd survived a lot of small hurts, by talking myself out of them. "Okay," I finally said, my voice quieter than I wanted. "If this is what you need, I'll help." The silence on the line lasted only a beat, but in that beat, I hoped he'd say, You're right, Mom. Let's put it in writing. Let's do this properly. Instead, he said, relief flooding his voice. I knew I could count on you. You're the only one we trust. You're not like everyone else. You're not like everyone else. It was meant as a compliment, but something inside me sagged. Being not like everyone else meant I was the one who didn't need a paycheck, the one who didn't ask for boundaries, the one who could always be counted on to sacrifice. After we hung up, I stood in the quiet kitchen, the faucet dripping into the sink. The TV murmured from the living room, some sitcom laugh track that suddenly sounded hollow. I glanced at my reflection in the dark window above the sink, tired eyes, work-worn hands, and tried to convince myself I'd been offered an opportunity, not a trap. I smoothed a hand over the front of my worn t-shirt and whispered, "It's family. It'll be different this time." Even as I said it, a part of me already knew that was a lie. By the end of the first year, my days had started to blur. I woke up before sunrise, pulled on the same black polo with the shop logo, and drove through half-empty streets while most people were still asleep. I unlocked the front door, switched on the lights, started the coffee, and checked the register. It felt like I was winding up a machine everyone else got to use, while I just kept turning the crank. Most mornings, my son wandered in later, coffee in hand, talking about big plans and next steps. He'd clap me on the shoulder and say, "You're the best, Mom. We couldn't do this without you." Sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. "We couldn't do this without you" also meant we won't pay you like we'd pay anyone else. I smiled anyway, because I'd trained myself to treat praise like payment, even though praise never covered rent. I did everything. Inventory orders, invoices, books, suppliers when deliveries were late. When daycare closed early or school was out, I stepped in without question. I'd set the kids up at a back table with crayons and snacks and watch them while answering calls, never getting a real break. My son would say, "They love you more than any babysitter." It sounded like a compliment, but I heard what wasn't said. No paycheck, no schedule, just the assumption I would bend my life around theirs. One afternoon, the manager at my old job called and asked if I'd come back part-time. I stood in the cramped office at the shop, staring at spreadsheets while she offered a real wage and benefits. Through the window, I could see my son laughing with a customer while his wife arranged a display. He'd told me, "After the first year, we'll start paying you. You'll get your share. This is the foundation." So I told my old manager, throat tight, that I was committed to the family business. When I hung up, regret rolled through me. My son never knew about that call. He never saw it as something else I gave up. The little things cut the most. When the shop needed curtains, his wife mentioned it over dinner. "It would be so nice if this place felt more cozy," she said, scrolling her phone. Before the week was over, I'd gone to the fabric store, paid out of my own pocket, and stayed up late sewing simple panels at my kitchen table. When I hung them up, they both said, "Wow, you're amazing." I smiled, but my credit card balance had gone up again, and all I had to show for it was another compliment instead of a reimbursement. Anytime I hinted at money, the air changed. One evening, after staying late for a last-minute inventory count, I said quietly, "We should talk about regular pay. Even a small amount would help me plan." My son's face tightened for a second, then smoothed into that calm, patient look he used when he thought I was being emotional. "Mom, you're thinking like an employee," he said. "You're not an employee, you're family. Family doesn't keep score. We're building this together, and you'll be taken care of when it matters." Family doesn't keep score hit like a slap wrapped in a smile. It made me feel greedy for even asking. I nodded, but resentment flared. He kept score with everyone else. Vendors, suppliers, every penny that left the business. Somehow, money only became not the point when it came to me. The day everything shifted started like any other. I cleaned the front, restocked shelves, and settled into the office to reconcile receipts. My son and his wife were out front chatting with a man in a suit. I assumed he was from the bank or insurance. Their voices drifted through the half-open office door while I typed numbers, the key's rhythm almost comforting. Then my son's voice dropped lower. "Yeah, we already transferred my share into her name," he said. "It's just safer that way. Everything's under my wife now." I froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The man asked something I couldn't fully hear. My son answered, "My mom just helps out around here. She's not an owner or anything. She doesn't need to be on anything official." I stared at the screen as the numbers blurred. For 3 years, every early morning, every late night, every school pickup, every check I quietly wrote for supplies, none of it existed on paper. In his mind, I was a helper, not a partner, not someone who deserved a contract, just background labor. I didn't move, I didn't speak. My ears buzzed, and it felt like the whole shop had gone quiet except for his words looping in my head. Just helps out, not an owner. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. I focused on breathing slow and even, because I knew if I stood up, I might say something I couldn't take back. They laughed about something out front. Chairs scraped. The door chime rang as the man left. My son popped his head into the office and said, "We're heading out for a bit. Can you close tonight, Mom?" Casual, confident, already turning away before I could answer. The assumption in that question burned. I swallowed the bitterness and nodded, even though his back was already turned. The resentment I'd been carrying for years finally settled into something colder and heavier. I said nothing, but inside, a quiet line had been crossed. The shift began with one small, stubborn thought I couldn't shove down anymore. If I'm not an owner, then what am I? It followed me everywhere. It sat beside me at the register while I rang up customers. It hovered over my shoulder in the office while I stared at spreadsheets late at night. It lay next to me in bed when I finally dragged myself home, my back aching, my hands still faintly smelling of cleaner. A week after I overheard my son say I just help out, my old friend Lisa stopped by the shop. We grew up on the same street. She knew me before I was anyone's mother or anyone's helper. Now she worked at a small tax office across town. She came in for coffee, looked around with bright eyes and said, "Wow, you've built something nice here." "We," I said automatically. Then my voice trailed off. The word tasted wrong. Lisa studied me. "So how's it set up? You're on the paperwork, right? This is your retirement plan, if I know you." She smiled like it was obvious. Her question landed hard. My cheeks warmed. I heard my son's voice in my head. "She doesn't need to be on anything official." I wanted to defend him, explain, smooth it over the way I always did. Instead, I hesitated. The silence between us felt louder than any answer. "I just help out," I said finally. "It's a family thing. My son and his wife are the owners. I'm here to support them." Lisa's smile faded. "You work here full-time, don't you?" "Yeah," I admitted. "Open to close most days. I do the books. I watch the kids sometimes." She nodded slowly. "And they pay you? How?" The question hit like a spotlight. I thought of the Mother's Day card, the occasional gift card, the free sandwich they insisted I take for lunch. I thought of the time my daughter-in-law said, "We're all sacrificing right now. After I mentioned my rent going up, it's the complicated," I said. The word made me feel small. It covered the truth with a thin blanket. Lisa didn't push, but her face changed. Softer, more serious. "Come by my office sometime," she said gently. "Just to talk. No pressure. I see a lot of situations. Sometimes things look fine until you look at the details." Her tone was kind, but it carried a warning. It brought back a memory I hadn't touched in years. My own father telling me, "Don't make trouble. You'll be taken care of," right before he left almost everything to my brother. I stayed quiet. I watched the house I grew up in change hands while I stood on the sidewalk with a cardboard box. That old feeling crawled back into my stomach. The same story, just a different generation. That night, after closing, I sat alone in the office with the door shut. The shop was dark except for the little lamp on the desk. The reports, invoices, and receipts were right there. For the first time, I pulled them together not as a helper, but as someone checking a story that no longer made sense. I printed monthly summaries. I opened bank statements. I looked at the numbers I had entered myself: sales, expenses, profit. I saw how often my son and his wife reimbursed themselves for owner draws, how often they bought new equipment, decorations, little gadgets for the kids. My name never appeared anywhere except as a contact or emergency number, never as an employee, never as an owner. The unfairness hit like a wave. I was there more hours than either of them. I skipped doctor appointments to cover shifts. I used my own credit card when supplies were needed fast. I cleaned the bathroom on Sunday nights when everyone else was home resting. And on paper, I was invisible. That's when I found something that made my throat tighten. An email from my son from the first month the shop opened. I'd saved it without thinking. I opened it now. Mom, it said, thanks again for doing this. You're not just helping. You're building something with us. This is your future too. Once we get stable, we'll make it official. You'll have your share. Promise. Back then, I read those words with tears in my eyes, proud and hopeful. Now they felt like a bad joke. The promise was there in writing, but nothing else was. I could have confronted him right then. I could have demanded pay, demanded respect, demanded a contract. Instead, I chose silence, for my grandchildren, for the part of me that still wanted to protect them. But this silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was planning. The next day, my son walked in late, humming and scrolling on his phone. Mom, we need you to cover Saturday too, he said. We've got a thing with her family. Of course, another weekend taken. I waited for him to say, we'll pay you extra or we'll fix your pay soon. He didn't. You don't mind, right? He added, you're the most flexible. Most flexible made me feel like a rubber band pulled in every direction. We'll see, I said quietly. He blinked, surprised. He was used to my automatic yes. Later, my daughter-in-law pulled me aside. Her voice was soft but firm. We're really counting on you, she said. It would be hard to find someone else willing to do all this. And definitely not someone we can trust like you. We don't want a stranger. Her words were sugar-coated, but the message underneath was clear. Don't rock the boat. Don't ask for what a normal job would give you. Be grateful you're allowed to give everything. That evening, I went to Lisa's office with a folder stuffed with printed reports, emails, screenshots, and notes. I laid it all out on her desk. My hands shook a little. My voice didn't. She read slowly, brow tightening. Every time she circled a number or pointed to something missing, another layer of confusion peeled away. Underneath was anger, and something stronger, clarity. Here's the thing, Lisa said finally, looking straight at me. You haven't just been helping, you've been working, full-time, without pay, without protection. And from what I'm seeing, they've benefited from that in ways that could raise questions if anyone looked closely. It hurt, because it was true. I thought of my son saying, she just helps out. She's not an owner. I realized his version of the story and mine weren't just different. They were opposites. When I left Lisa's office, the sky was turning dark. I walked to my car slowly, holding the folder close. The hurt was still there, deep and real, but it wasn't a weight pressing me down anymore. It was fuel. Soon after I walked out of Lisa's office, I made a choice. I was done waiting for someone else to do right by me. I was going to protect myself, quietly, step by step, without drama or tears. On the outside, I would look the same as always. On the inside, everything had changed. First, I bought a big notebook and a plain file box. Late into the night at my kitchen table, I wrote down every day I could remember working at the shop. I pulled up old texts from my son. Can you open for me? Can you close tonight? And copied dates and times. Each casual little message brought a fresh wave of resentment. Every "can you watch the kids?" and you don't mind, right? Reminded me how natural it had become for him to treat my time like it cost nothing. I printed the messages and slid them into plastic sleeves. It felt like I was finally putting weight on things he always acted like were light. Next, I went through my bank and credit card statements. I circled every shop purchase that came out of my pocket. Cleaning supplies, emergency printer ink, decorations my daughter-in-law wanted to make it look nicer, fabric for the curtains. I remembered each conversation. Her smiling, "You're so crafty you can just grab something, right?" Him saying, "Easy as breathing, we'll settle up later, Mom." Later never came. With every circle of my pen, the unfairness hit again, but this time it fed my focus instead of breaking me down. When I had enough collected, I called Lisa. She set up a meeting with an accountant she trusted, someone who knew tax rules and labor laws better than either of us. In a small, plain office, I laid out my folders and notes. He listened carefully, asked clear questions, and never once made me feel silly for not understanding sooner. "So," he said, looking over the papers, "you've been working full-time, management and bookkeeping, for more than 2 years. No paychecks, no tax forms, no written agreement. And they call it helping family. The way he repeated that phrase tightened my chest. Yes, I said. They keep telling me I'm not an employee, I'm family. Saying it to a stranger made it sound as wrong as it felt. He nodded. The IRS and the State Labor Department may see this differently. This looks like work, not a favor. If the business has treated your labor as free while claiming other expenses, that can create serious problems. You have options. Relief and anger hit me at the same time. Relief that I hadn't imagined it. Anger that my son had brushed off my concerns with family doesn't keep score while building a system that ignored everything I did. We created a detailed record of my hours and duties. He helped me write a formal statement about my role. Then I signed paperwork to file a complaint with the State Department of Labor for unpaid wages. We also prepared a report for the IRS about unreported work and possible tax issues. Sending it all in felt heavy and strangely peaceful. I wasn't screaming or begging. I was telling the truth to people whose job was to listen. At the same time, I changed how I behaved at the shop. I stopped using my own money for supplies. When something ran out, I wrote it on a list and left it on the counter. The first time my son saw it, he frowned. "You didn't grab cleaner? You always just grab it." I met his eyes. I can't afford to pay for business items anymore. The shop needs to cover it. His confusion flickered into irritation. A few days later, my daughter-in-law pulled me aside. "We noticed you've been leaving right at closing," she said, voice smooth. "We really need someone flexible." Things come up. Before, that tone would have made me rush to prove I was still good. This time I said, "My hours need to be clear." I go home when the workday ends. Her smile thinned. Underneath her softness was the same message as always. My needs did not matter. The resentment rose, but I held it steady. Then the letters started arriving at the shop. One from the IRS, one from the State Labor Office, official envelopes with return addresses you couldn't pretend not to see. I watched my son open the first one at the counter. His face went pale, then flushed red. He read fast. His wife snatched the paper, scanned it, and whispered, "What is this?" He stormed into the back office where I was working and shut the door a little too hard. "Did you do something?" he demanded, anger sharp, but fear underneath it. "We just got a notice. They want our records. They're asking about unpaid labor and misclassification. This could ruin us, hearing us hurt in a new way." He never included me in ownership, never put my name on anything that mattered. But now that there was trouble, suddenly it was us. The old instinct in me flared, to protect him, to fix it, to take the weight back onto my shoulders. I didn't. "You should talk to a lawyer or an accountant," I said calmly. "They can help you respond." He stared at me like I was a stranger. "Mom, how could you?" he said. "You're destroying the comfort we built. You're putting everything at risk. After all we've done for you." That last line cut deep. After all we've done for you. I thought of my unpaid hours, my empty bank account, my tired body, every thank you instead of a paycheck, every promise of later. I didn't argue. I didn't list my sacrifices. I refused to carry his story for him. "Get professional advice," I repeated quietly. My calm seemed to unsettle him more than any shouting could have. In the days that followed, their system began to crack. They scrambled for pay records that didn't exist. They tried to stitch together stories to match the numbers. They whispered in the back room, made tense calls, sent rushed emails. More than once I heard my daughter-in-law say, "If she'd just stayed quiet, we wouldn't be in this mess." The blame stung, but for the first time the consequences weren't landing only on my shoulders. Through it all, I stayed steady. I did my assigned tasks, nothing more. No extra shifts, no unpaid supply runs, no sudden childcare. I answered only what I was required to answer. I didn't justify. I didn't apologize. My silence wasn't fear anymore. It was a line I had drawn, and I wasn't moving it. The first sign things had shifted for them came as a text from my son. It popped up while I was making coffee in my quiet kitchen. "We need to talk. Lawyer says we should handle this privately. Can you come in tomorrow?" "No, how are you?" "No, are you okay?" Just urgency and what we needed. Even now, with real trouble on his doorstep, he spoke like I was something to manage, not a person he'd wronged. I went anyway, not for him, for me. At the lawyer's office, I walked into a small conference room and saw my son, his wife, and a man in a gray suit. My son gave me a tight smile and stood halfway up, like he wasn't sure if a hug was safe. "Mom," he said, "thanks for coming. We just want to clear this up." Clear this up. As if I'd spilled something not worked for years without pay. The lawyer motioned for us to sit and began speaking in careful phrases: potential exposure, possible penalties, misclassified labor. Every time he said them, I watched my son flinch. Every time he said, "Your mother's unpaid work," I felt a small pulse of justice I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Then the lawyer turned to me. "To avoid a drawn-out process, your son is prepared to compensate you for past work and to formally recognize your interest in the business," he said. "The proposal is to calculate unpaid wages and a fair value for what would have been a share, then buy that out in a lump sum. In return, you would agree not to pursue further claims, compensate you." My throat tightened. I glanced at my son. He couldn't quite meet my eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost wounded. "We never meant to take advantage of you, Mom. We just thought it would be easier this way. Running a business is hard. You filing those complaints, it really blindsided us. We never meant. Easier this way. You blindsided us." It wasn't an apology. It was a story where the real problem was me refusing to stay quiet. Resentment flickered, but I kept my face calm. For years, I swallowed my anger to keep the peace. Now I held it steady to protect myself. His wife leaned in with that same sweet firmness. "We're trying to fix this, but the way you did it, going to the government, it felt like a betrayal. After everything we gave you." I nearly laughed. They had given me long hours, an aching body, and a future held together with promises that never made it to paper. But I didn't turn it into a shouting match. I was done performing for them. The lawyer slid the agreement across the table. It listed everything in black and white: back wages, overtime, interest, and a dollar value attached to my role in growing the shop. Seeing the number made my hands shake. It was more money than I'd ever had in my account at once. It was also proof of how much I'd been expected to give away. I read every line, no rushing, no apologizing for taking up time. When I asked questions, my son shifted in his chair. He was used to me trusting him without conditions. Each time I pointed to a paragraph and said, "Explain this," his jaw tightened. He didn't say it out loud, but his eyes did. "Why are you being so difficult?" It stung, but not enough to move me. When I was sure it was clean and complete, I said, "I'll sign on one condition. Once this is done, I'm out. No more work at the shop. No more helping behind the scenes. No more 'we'll fix it later.'" This is the last later. My son stared at me. "You're really walking away?" he asked. "After everything we built together?" We built. He could say it now when he needed me to share the risk, never when he was collecting the reward. "Yes," I said, "I am." His face hardened. "You're tearing this family apart over money." That line burned. He'd always tied my silence to loyalty, and now he tried to tie my dignity to selfishness. The old guilt rose up, but it didn't take over. "I'm setting a boundary," I said. "If that tears something apart, it wasn't as strong as you thought." We signed. I walked out with my copy and the promise of a wire transfer to my own account. No more thank you cards instead of pay. No more "we'll put it in the will." This time it was written down. Now, not someday. After that, the messages started. Long texts from my son. "We can still fix this if you withdraw your complaints." Short, sharp ones from his wife. "Hope you're happy. We had to let people go because of this." Every sentence tried to drop the weight of their choices onto my shoulders. I wrote a dozen replies in my head, explanations, defenses, lists of everything I'd ever done. I never sent them. Instead, my replies were simple. "I'm not coming back. I wish you well. I won't discuss this anymore." Each short line felt like a small act of self-respect. They called me cold. They said I'd changed. The truth was, I'd finally stopped changing myself for them. Then one afternoon, an email came from a name I didn't recognize, a regular customer from the shop. "I heard you're not there anymore," she wrote. "You were the only reason that place felt welcoming. You always remembered my order and asked about my kids. I hope you're somewhere people appreciate you for real. That's when tears finally came, but they weren't frustration. They were release. Someone outside my family had seen me, not as flexible help, but as a person who mattered. The last scene is simple. I'm at my own small kitchen table, older, more tired, but finally at peace. There's money in my account that I earned and claimed. No one texts me at dawn asking me to open a shop for free. My phone buzzes sometimes with messages from my son, but I don't rush to answer. I take my time, sometimes I don't answer at all. I'm alone more now, but I'm not empty. I cook for myself, not for a crowd that forgets to say more than thanks, Mom. I'm looking at a flyer for a community class, thinking about signing up, not to help anyone else, just for me. For the first time, I understand something I wish I'd learned years ago. You don't have to earn love by working yourself to the bone. And when someone keeps rejecting your worth, walking away isn't hate. It's a quiet, steady kind of love for yourself.